Hello and welcome to another edition of One-on-One. I'm your host, Tyler Small. Today we're joined by yet another notable alum from the Salle University family, Mike Garafolo from NFL Network. Mike, how you doing?
Doing great, Tyler. Thanks for having me, man. Hope all is well on your end. Here we are again in the virtual world. That's how things work these days, but
You're right. Yeah, this is our second season of doing this online programming. Not as great of an experience as being in studio, of course, which I'm sure you can attest to, but yeah, we're happy to be doing something.
Yep.
So we'll dive right into it. You've been working as a reporter for NFL Network. Talk about what that's been like now in the off season, or as opposed to when you're in the heat of the season. Just talk about a little bit your day to day and what goes into being a reporter.
Yeah, well, certainly during COVID, it's been different. It hasn't been as much of the face-to-face stuff. The on-site stuff is at a distance now. The hope is that that's going to really change. They're already greenlighting one-on-one interviews with players and staff once the preseason and training camp roll around. And then the hope is that after that, you're going to get some locker room access as well and get back to the way that things used to be. And, I remember I was on one of our shows early in the off season, or maybe during the postseason. And I just kind of went on this rant of what I miss. I miss access. Access is a lot better to be able to get people in person and to be able to have a full run of a locker room. I think it hurts the teams and it hurts the league when you don't have that, because so many good stories come out of that. So many tidbits and insights into what happened on the field on Sunday come out of those locker rooms. Some things you don't even know to ask about, and the player just kind of mentions, and the next thing you know, you've got this great story. And that's what engages people. They love the game, but they also love the stories, the understanding what's happening on the field and the people and the personalities. So it's been a lot of working from home lately, but hopefully once training camp rolls around, we'll be traveling once again with zero restrictions, or at least zero restrictions of where we can go. I mean, we did training camp virtually from home. The hope is we're going to be on location and having a lot of that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, so I guess that's a perfect way to get right into it. So talk about what was it like kind of trying to stay with players and keep a conversation through Zoom or traveling with the team. Did they kind of section you off where you're supposed to be? Because you cover the whole team, or the whole league, I should say. So talk about how difficult that was trying to do that from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, there was no access to the facility. So all the interviews were done via Zoom, and you weren't allowed to be there and watch practice. In some cases, I mean, some places let you do that, but then you'd have to leave and go somewhere else to do your Zooms for the access. So it wasn't necessarily wise use of your time to be there in person. So that was difficult. And then during game day, you were, we did our hits. Usually we're on the field. We were up on the top of the first level in a lot of places overlooking the field. And so you didn't have that access on game day. And then you were right up to the press box. And then after the game, it was right there. The interviews were held. So, it was covering things from afar this last year. So again, hoping that's going to change and hoping to get that access once again on game day. And it was really, I would leave the press box from time to time, whether it was, getting in position to do a one-on-one interview, which again was a remote, you'd be in the stands and the player would be on the field, or just going out to see what it was like. And, I remember there was an Eagles game I covered and Dallas Goedert scored a key touchdown. Was it against maybe Seattle, I want to say? Mm-hmm. And it was just so weird to not hear any reaction in the stands. It was, he reacted. You could hear him scream. You could hear the teammates, but there was just no noise to go along with it. And I hope that's something that we never experience as a media corps, as a fan base, and as players and coaches and staff members as well, because that was just not what we're used to with NFL football.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, now that we see some of the NHL and NBA playoffs back to bigger capacity, definitely feels more at home.
Yep.
So you've been working for NFL Network since 2016. So we'll go back to the more normal beforehand of your handful of seasons beforehand. Talk about actually goes into that when you're given a game to work or a story to follow or a player who follow up with? Like, how much of a transition was that from, say, your time with the Giants when you were a beat writer, just focusing on them, as opposed to now doing the whole landscape, all 30 teams? And
Yeah.
just talk about what goes into a normal game week.
It's a big transition. And I know a couple of guys that are making it now, going from covering one team to covering the league. And I remember I got advice from a national reporter as I was making the transition, where he said, it's going to be a lot different, because covering a team, it's 1 to 53 on the roster, or 55 or whatever it is now. Nationally, it's different. There are only so many players that really register on the national scale. His number was 50. He said there's probably 50 players in the entire NFL, so not even 2 per team, that really are guys that ring the bell nationally. Now, it depends who you're working for. I started working for Fox, and so Fox is covering all sports, and so there's that's shrunk even more, whereas NFL Network only does football. So you could probably expand that a little bit more and say, hey, there might be 100 players at NFL Network versus 50 at Fox or ESPN or one of those other places. But I got what he was saying. I was covering the Giants, and I remember he said, Justin Tuck is like a big presence and personality. He's a defensive captain, a captain of this team, 2-time Super Bowl winner, almost the MVP 2 times. He says he's borderline. He says I'd probably put him like 50 on the list of because he's not a skill position player. That sells. He's not a quarterback. He's not a wide receiver or running back. And I remember it blew me away, because when he spoke, it was, a big story in the New York market. It was something that all the reporters had to be there when he was talking, because you knew it was going to be something that was going to be influential, that he was going to say in that locker room. And so that was really an eye opener, that, covering things nationally, because a Broncos fan or a Chiefs fan or a Packers fan is not going to care what necessarily a New York team or a Philly team, what their defensive captain is going to say. He's more, hey, I know the wide receiver, the quarterback, I have him maybe on my fantasy team. That's the stuff that's really going to drive it. So that was a big change. And now once you understand that flow, it makes your life a whole lot easier to understand what the editors want, what your audience wants, and what's going to sell. But for a typical game week, it's a lot of times, you see, because I get to float, I do a little bit of the insider stuff. I do some hosting. I field report. So if I'm assigned a game on Sunday, I know that that's going to be my main focus, 75% of what I'm doing for that entire week, getting ready for that game. But I still have to make sure I'm monitoring the entire league. And, if I'm on Tuesday by myself and Ian Rappaport, our insider, is off, and Tom Pelissero, our other insider, is off, I know I'm going to have to keep an eye on things around the league. So it's learning how to budget your time and how to work that flow for the entire week. But try to be focused on, hey, your assignment is this game this week. Give people the most information you possibly can before that game kicks off, so that they're ready for it.
Yeah, I guess you're right. National media doesn't need to know about a third string linebacker on the Giants. I get what you're saying. But so talk about, what is it like? How much freedom do you really have when you are getting it? So you may be assigned a game or a team or something, but is that pretty much it? Do they just say you have to cover this, find what would be the most appealing, or do they kind of guide you along the way?
Yeah, no, it's I've been at it long enough to know, hey, what we're going to really talk about, and my best stuff that I'm going to compile that week. I mean, you want it to be, if you're covering a Chiefs game, you want it to be Mahomes related. I mean, if you've got 6 hits during our pregame show, you're going to spend a couple talking about, you better say the name Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah. But if you get good information about a wide receiver or a running back or somebody that might, be used alongside him, or, that's kind of how you want to push it. You want to have the most unique stuff. If your Mahomes stuff is blah, but you've got good info on how they're going to deploy some other stuff, I mean, that's the stuff that you really want to hit and let people know about. So they don't, as long as you give good information, they're happy with it. Any reporter doesn't want to get beat on anything. We never wanted to be that way when I was on the beat covering a specific team, one team with the Giants. You didn't want to get beat on anything. Same thing when you're covering a game. You don't want, hey, ESPN's reporter to have something huge and, oh, you didn't have that. So there's still that part of it, pushing things from a news gathering standpoint. But they pretty much, as long as you're providing good information, they're good with what we've got.
And what is that world like, just trying to be the first to a story in this world now where we learn information by the second, basically, and it's all about who gets it first? What is that like, getting those inside sources and trusting somebody to relay that information?
Well, it takes time to build those relationships on both ends, knowing that they can trust you and you can trust them. I mean, I've had, stories over the years where I've heard things and run with them and realize, all right, that person needs to be double checked, right? When that person says something from now on, I better have it. I mean, you always better have a second source, but, but some people don't do it. I mean, I know I've got a specific agent in mind that will text maybe 2 or 3 reporters. And I know that 1, he needs to be double checked. And 2, one of those reporters is going to put it out without checking. And without fail, his 60 to 70%, hit rate, sometimes I'm mad because it was right, but the 30% of the time, like, boy, I'm glad I was double checking it because that reporter just looked silly putting that out there. So you always have to make sure your info is good. Simple misunderstandings can happen, right? You can have a great source. I was just talking to one the other day. We were talking about Dwayne Brown, because I was told Dwayne Brown might not show up for minicamp with the Seahawks, the left tackle, because he wants a new contract. And he wound up showing up, which I'm glad I didn't put it out there. I was able to say, hey, he showed up, but he still wants a new cut. So he still was ahead of the story. But we were talking about him and Trent Williams with the 49ers. And at some point I asked, wait, how old is Dwayne? And I maybe didn't say Dwayne. I think I said, how old is he? And the guy said 32. So for a couple of days I went, wow, he's a lot younger than I thought he was. And then finally I looked it up before I said anything. And I saw he's 35. And I went back. I said, hey, you told me he was 32. You were way off. He said, no, I was talking about Trent. Trent's 32. And so, I mean, it wasn't a piece of key information that I ran with, but it's a good source. And if we have a miscommunication on something, I'm just going to run with it. So you always want to make sure that you're checking things, double checking things, because that's how mistakes can happen and miscommunications can happen in this league. But you talk about the instantaneous world of news. That wasn't how it was when I first started in the business. I mean, reporters today that are just starting out will never know the feeling of waking up in the morning and that cold sweat of checking everybody else's stories to make sure that you didn't get beat on something, because it happens instantaneously now. As soon as that reporter has it, he'll tweet it out, he'll put it out, whatever, and then you confirm it in 5 seconds. So your editor may not have even seen it. Hey, I got this, oh, okay, cool. He has no idea that you got beat on it. You could fool him. You probably wouldn't even tell him. Whereas, if you got to wait a whole day to update your story in the next day's paper, you got to wear that. You got to wear that L. But by the same token, when you had the W, it felt great. It felt really good.
I've always heard that idea that you could check your phone and be a couple minutes behind the punch and then forgotten about and confirm it and whatnot, but I've never heard that comparison. That's
yeah,
weird.
I mean, and you talked about checking. I mean, the beauty of it is back then, let's say you're covering free agency.
Yeah.
You could wake up at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. You wake up at noon. You can wake up whenever. You just had to file a story by, our first deadline was 7 p.m. at night. Now, if you sleep till 9, you could have a story at 6, and people are like, "Where is this guy for 3 hours?" Right? So, some good, some bad with the new way of things, but it was a good way of. I was talking to my former editor about this. When you walked in that media room every day, you knew who won. You knew who had won the day. It's not that way anymore.
I'm actually going to cut myself off because I could talk to you about this all day. So I'm going to wrap this up and ask my last question, taking you back to your days at LaSalle, and talk about what about your time as an explorer best prepared you for where you are today. I mean, you've obviously worn plenty of hats ever since you've entered the professional world, talking about your writing side, the reporting side, on-air experience. What do you think was the most crucial information that you learned?
Yeah, I mean, I would say getting the reps on on TV in Philly. I mean, everybody was watching what we were doing. It wasn't like just some class project that you saw amongst yourselves, which we did those as well in our classes. But it was good to know that feeling of, hey, people are watching. You don't get that at a lot of places, a lot of schools, and so you're getting the experience and learning how shows are put together and what the workflow is like and how they work. I mean, we were live to tape. We weren't live, but we were live to tape. But you get that feeling, you get those reps, while also that accountability. Because once I started in the business, and I say this to people all the time, if you're an accountant or you're a mechanic or you're whatever, pick a job. You get the chance to learn on the job, and maybe they can kind of hide you for a while you get up to speed. You can't hide in our field. What we do is out there. And so once I was following the Eagles for however many years in Philly, growing up a fan of the team and then covering the team while I was down there, and then got thrusted into covering the Giants, who at least it was NFC East. At least I had a sense for how things had gone along because I followed them tangentially. But I do remember that feeling of these people aren't going to know who I am. I'm going to make mistakes because I wasn't around last year and the year before that and all that stuff. And the not so much even the historical context of the team, which I'm still learning, by the way. I mean, there's so much because they've been around forever. And there's things in players and stuff that I'm like, never even knew about that. So to be thrown in there and have to learn while you're doing it, it was, I had already experienced that. So I was ready for it. And it helped me by knowing that everything I was putting out, people were going to analyze and scrutinize. So that was huge for me, and something I'm always going to be thankful for, having done stuff for LaSalle 56 on camera and off camera.
And don't worry, you still now have a chance to be scrutinized by that same group of people, that same fandom that watch us right here on this episode too.
Right back where it started.
Exactly. Well, Mike, I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to take a chance to come and chat with me today. I really appreciate it.
You got it, Tyler. Thanks for having me, and good luck to you. And like I said, right now, this is it, man. This is the experience that you're going to be leaning on in a couple of years, no matter what you're doing.
Can't wait. Thanks again. So that is going to do it for us this week on One on One. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.